Well, I want to give you the cliff notes, actually, the fast and quick and dirty theories on actually going into an ice age rather than global warming. I know now they call it global warming climate change, and things are there's a temporary pause in the climate change and the global warming. Anyway, there's other theories out there, and actually I think they're more solid. I've known about these for a number of years. Actually, I'm going to point to a couple links. IceAgeNow.com, which is the old link, and also IceAgeNow.info. I think .com got hacked or something, so he's got a blog now, .info. But I've been kind of following this for quite some time, and so there I'm showing here a really cold city. But actually, over the last several years, you've been seeing some extraordinarily, unusually cold, wintry winters where there's a lot more snow than usual. And sometimes the weather gets unusually warm, too. This was in northern Italy. And actually, even right now, going on in Britain, and even recently in I think it was Russia, they had a lot of snow in Moscow. And back in November and also early December, they've had some seriously record snows in, especially November, Minnesota, Maine, New York, with Buffalo, of course, northern Japan, and China and Russia. So, but like those are areas that normally get a lot of snow, but they've gotten as much snow as they normally get in an entire year before winter even started. So, kind of unusual. So basically, there's several theories going on here. I'm going to go over them really quick because you can listen to other things. I'm going to point to the link, and you can look at other details in IceAgeNow.info and IceAgeNow.com. Now, what's important about this is that it is a fact that before you actually feel the effects of extreme cold where it bothers you, it's going to affect the crop production, and it's going to affect the food supply of the world. And actually, that's probably where Jim Rogers, the famous investor, is probably going to be very accurate in his guesstimate that agriculture is going to be one of the most lucrative areas on this earth because of farmers are going to be very valuable that can grow crops because of climate change. Now, other things are going on because of climate change. There's several reasons, but I'll give you one other reason too that you probably never heard of too much, is that when planets line up on the same side of the solar system, it actually pulls Earth's orbit more further out in a more of an elliptical pattern, and there's more extremes. In other words, Earth does not exactly go around the sun in a perfect circle. It has an elliptical pattern during certain times, and then it gets more circular during certain times, and that seems to occur every 180 years. There's also other cycles that happen every other 110,000 years, but there's other cycles that happen every 180 years. So I also want to point out something else. A lot of times you see on the major media where you see these glaciers falling into the ocean. I'm giving you a real quick and dirty on this, the abbreviated version. Where you see glaciers falling into the ocean. Actually, this is a normal occurrence, whether the Earth is getting warmer or colder, because as the Earth gets colder, what happens is the ice keeps growing, it keeps pushing outward. It's almost like they'll put out like the glaciers are melting, and that's why they're falling in the ocean. It doesn't matter if it's getting warmer or colder. This is a normal progression. What happens when it gets colder, the ice gets thicker, the glaciers push outward till there's nothing underneath them to support them. There's no land underneath them to support them. They go over the ocean, and then they crack off and fall in the ocean. Actually, the Arctic ice sheets are getting thicker and larger over the last several years. So when it gets colder, it does this too. Now, also, I just want to also just point out something here, because even when we were in the middle of the ice age, they said the maximum extent of the glacialization of North America was, here's a map of it, an approximate map. Now, if you go down in the southern parts of the United States, it wasn't that much different from what it is today. It was maybe several degrees colder. It was a matter of going up a little bit further north, it was enough temperature difference where the snows would not fully melt, and there was a lot more moisture in the air during the winter due to other reasons, which I'm going to get into, that caused a lot more heavier snowfalls in the winter, where it wasn't such a dry time in the winter. There was a lot more precipitation in the winter, plus being several degrees colder, that added up where you had this glacialization. Now, I'm not saying we're going into this, but we actually are likely to be going into a much more severe colder weather for over the next 15 to 20 years. It depends on whose estimate it is. They're saying 2040 plus or minus 10 years, the next mini cycle. But there seems to be other cycles that are coinciding with this, so nobody knows. Now, the other thing is, another factor in weather change or global climate change is the magnetic fields. The magnetic field intensity of the Earth. It's actually been steadily declining since 2,000 years ago, since the time of Christ. And during a time when they call it the global floods, you'll see this not only in the Bible but other tales everywhere across the world, that the Earth's magnetic field was very low. And there's also a number of theories out there. This is where we had species changes. Where certain species disappeared, certain species came into being, and this is probably due to, and theoretically due to, the exposure to the cosmic rays from the outer space, which were blocked before, but when the magnetic shield is brought down, those cosmic rays come through. So it basically, when you start looking at it, the species changes that occur during these cycles, it does actually go against both the environmentalists and the creationists. It's, in other words, the environmentalists will say there's a slow change, and it's a gradual change, but actually what some are now theorizing, and the creationists say it happened all at once and it was just created by God. But it may be that there's a radical change during certain times on this earth when there is a diminishing of the magnetic field intensity of the Earth's surface. And actually, we're going into this right now. It's been accelerating that the magnetic field has been decreasing. So, something could be happening. I don't know. I mean, they've had major changes on this earth many thousands of years ago, where they found dinosaurs or whatever it was frozen to death with tropical grasses in their stomach. In other words, it came upon themselves very quickly. But what we're looking at is actually probably something that's going to occur quite radical, but maybe nowhere near as radical as what happened during other times during Earth's history. But now, another issue out there is they talk about the ocean's temperatures are getting warmer, and they're saying it's due to man-made CO2 gases. Actually, the reality of it is the ocean temperatures are getting warmer, lower the farther deeper in the deeper oceans, and deeper down you go. The ocean's surface temperatures are not getting warmer. It's deep down. But what they're finding out recently, and nobody really knows this for 100% sure, maybe they're just discovering more volcanoes, or maybe there are more active volcanoes actually occurring. But what's going on is active volcanoes are actually what is causing the lower ocean temperatures to be rising, not the man-made gases. Now, this is one of the theories out there, but it probably is legit. Now, a lot of times you look at pictures of Greenland, you'll say, well, look at all that ice that melted. But it's also underground volcanic activity that is causing that to happen. It's not the actual ambient Earth's temperature. Actually, the ambient Earth's temperature in the air is getting colder. But below the ocean, it's getting warmer in the deepest parts of the ocean due to underwater volcanic activities, which is numbered in the thousands by some are saying that. But the thing is, when this happens, it's also emitting other gases into the atmosphere, because it eventually goes through the water and it shields us from the sun, which causes a more cooling effect. And also it tends to evaporate more water by heating up the water temperature. So this was the extent of the last super ice age. Now, we were talking about what we probably might be going into as a mini ice age. And I'll point to these sites here. This is ice age now. .com. This site actually, the last time something was posted here was in 2011. I think it got hacked or something like that. He reopened one, iceagenow.info, and this is more current. We're talking about cars abandoned and 100,000 without power. Vast swaths of Britain hit by snow and ice on December 27, 2014. So, things are going on even today, at the very onset of early winter, and they've went on quite severely in November of this year, 2014, too. So we shall see. But again, there's another thing going on besides underwater volcanoes, besides the weakening of the magnetic intensity of the Earth, besides the sunspots. I didn't mention that yet, but the sunspot intensity going down. Now, volcanic activity and the magnetic activity is probably, of the magnetic strength of the Earth, is probably more important than the sunspots themselves. But the sunspots seem to actually have a influence too. The other thing is when planets line up, it also pulls the Earth into a more elliptical pattern, which seems to happen every 180 years, I believe it is. And when the Earth's orbit around the sun is more circular, the seasons are more steady, the winters aren't as severe, and there's not as much erratic climate change going on between the seasons. When the Earth's orbit becomes more elliptical, and this is a pattern that happens every 180 years, another thing that's coinciding with the volcanic activity, the sunspots, and the diminishing of the Earth's magnetic fields all at once. So it's probably pretty solid information that we're going into a major cooling phase here, even though you're going to see warm spells, but interdispersed with extremely cold spells. Now, the other thing is kind of interesting is that the ice sheets, now I don't know if it's going to get to this. We're talking about a mini ice age, not an event that happens every 110,000 years. But the ice sheets actually extended all over Canada into large portions of North America. They were thousands of feet deep. But other parts of America were not actually frozen, and they weren't that much different from what they are today. But Alaska actually did not have as many of the ice sheets because of the warming influence from the oceans. And these ice sheets actually brought about a much larger landmass. If you look at this, map here, you look at the size of Florida, you look at the size of the East Coast of the United States, it was extended out probably about 100 miles, like on the East Coast here, from Maryland, Virginia, North, South Carolina, New Jersey, Delaware. There was 100 miles more coastline further out because of the seas were over 350 feet lower by cooling. So, the other thing is, though, but the flip side of it is that during this time, it's going to greatly reduce crop production. But there is a way around it, I think. There's some things, actually, I talked about this before. Actually, there's one additive you can actually add to seeds. It's been known. I forgot who the vendor is, but it's called Willard Water. I actually have the Willard Dark. You can actually help the hardiness of seeds before you plant them by soaking them in this stuff. It was developed by a chemist, not well known, Willard Water. It might be something that it could possibly help with the situation where we're not going into this, but they're talking about a mini ice age where you're probably going to see temperatures like we had in the 1600s, which is quite severe. In other words, breaking records going back more than 200 years, more like we saw 400 years ago. Now, it is possible we could have something really crazy happen, because if there's an eruption on Mount St. Helens or something like that, or if we have a complete collapse of the magnetic field and we have a magnetic polar flip, who the hell knows what could happen? I mean, nobody's really got any history on this. But what it looks like pretty solid is going to happen is we are going into a global mini ice age. So, I can also state that I am aware that they're pushing for the global warming agenda because of the global carbon tax in the first place. I know that's the reality of it. I know there's other issues where there's pollution You don't want pollution. You don't want to ruin the Earth's resources, the air, the water. But the thing is, it's not the whole story. It's not the whole story. In other words, we're not going to influence. We could ruin our our health by ruining our environment, by polluting water and polluting air, but we're not. Mankind really is not affecting the climate per se. That's really what they're saying about when they're refuting the global warming. It's like we're polluting the earth, but we're not affecting the climate. There's other things going on that are affecting the climate, you know, thousands of times more strong than what mankind could possibly do. In other words, when you're talking about a volcano or something like that underwater, and there's thousands of these throughout the world, it's like generating more heat than we can ever generate with all the freaking gasoline engines we have. It's ridiculous. So anyway, the other thing is the magnetic fields are decreasing. The magnetic intensity of the Earth is decreasing. The magnetic poles are moving quicker and quicker. The fields are decreasing more at a rapidly accelerated rate. We've also had the lineup of the planets where the Earth should be more in a more elliptical pattern around its sun, in its orbit around the sun. So there's going to be more extremes in seasons. We also have the issue with the sunspots. So when you all put that together, it does make for a very strong argument for a mini ice age. And again, like when a major media shows you these glaciers falling into the ocean, that happens all the time. Whether if it's cooling or warming or whatever, glaciers happen to be growing. Actually, if you look at the site Ice Age Now .info or .com, you can see a lot of history about glaciers growing in every area of the world, no matter where it is. They're actually increasing. There's more glaciers, and the existing glaciers are increasing. There's certain areas that are melting due to underwater volcanic activity. But they're taking certain things and they're showing it to the public that, in other words, to try to convince them that there's global warming, because the whole agenda behind the global warming is global carbon tax to fund the global government. So, and without the global warming, it's like, what do we come up with next? So they got they banked a lot on that freaking theory. So, but it looks like it's wrong. And it's not. I'm not making a political statement. I'm making a scientific statement here, and I'm just giving it to you in the abridged version, the Cliff Notes version. But when you see this, iceberg falling off into the ocean, or the glacier piece falling into the ocean, that is a normal growth of glaciers. In other words, if this ice is growing and growing due to cold weather, once it pushes off, it's too big and it gets over the water, there's nothing to hold it up, it falls in the ocean. That doesn't mean it's melting. Certain areas are melting because there's underwater volcanic activity going on in the water, and the water's actually melting some areas. But overall, the ice packs on the Earth are actually getting thicker and increasing, and the glaciers are getting thicker. Actually, if you look at what's going on in the world, it's not like it's a big super duper drama thing I want to say here, but if you want to put it that way. But if you look back over the last several years, if you look back not just in the United States, in Connecticut, New York City, but also in Italy, England, some years are warmer. But if you look back over, say, from like 2008 to now, there's been some really radically super cold winters that have went back and broke records more than 100 years. Whether it was snowfall or cold. So things are going on. And see, this is just the beginning of it. See, in other words, this trend is actually happening, and this is just the beginning right now. And this is actually even per the best Russian scientist. I believe, I forgot the guy's name, but it was a Russian scientist who was he's in charge of the space station. He's the Russian that's in charge of the space station for Russia. He's even stated that this is 2014 is going to be right about the beginning of the mini global ice age. So they expect it to get colder and colder and colder till about 2035 to 2045. So if you see an extraordinarily cold winter this winter, don't think it's going to be getting warmer and that was just a freak thing. So, in other words, what I'm putting this out for is, in other words, if you understand the problem, you can adapt and change. You can adapt and overcome, and if you see to recognize the problem, you can take appropriate action. The problem is, they're not doing that. They're telling people it's going to global warming because they want to have a global carbon tax to fund the global government. Duh. And I didn't realize how many people are totally convinced of this because I've been aware of this for a number of years. I mean, I don't know when I was aware of this stuff. Probably it was quite a many years ago. I mean, I probably was one of the first ones that was even looking at the IceAgeNow.com blog. And, I can ascertain what information seems to make the most sense. But the thing is, it's not a matter of does it seem to make the most sense or if you're a cheerleader for one side or the other. The point is, you got to look at all the facts. The major media is not telling you all the facts. They're taking things out of context. One great thing they take out of context is anytime a part of a glacier falls in the ocean, that means it's warming. It means it melted. It doesn't mean that. If a glacier is growing and the ice pack is getting bigger, it's pushing out the old ice because of the new ice that formed. And that old ice, once it gets over the water, it can't structurally sustain itself over water where it was over land, and it falls into the ocean. It doesn't mean it's getting warmer. There's other areas, though, that do look like they're melting. If you look up in Greenland, I don't have a picture of that. But that is also because of the extreme volcanic activity that's going on up there, not because of the global warming. Now, I also got to say another thing about with the the volcanic activity. Now, when you have deep underwater volcanoes, it's warming the ocean's temperature, the water temperatures. But what that's causing is, first, it's causing more water to evaporate into the air, which is causing more precipitation. It's also causing gases that are escaping through the water to go up into the air and cause a blocking out more of the sun's rays. So if you have a warmer ocean with a colder ambient air temperature, that combines for more snow and ice during the winter. And we're having a more cold ambient air temperature due to the sunspots, the diminishing of the Earth's magnetic field, and also the elliptical orbit around the sun is getting more elliptical because of the lineup of the planets, that cycle that happens every 180 years. So all these things are coalescing at once. Now, the one thing that's could be really crazy out of left field is if there is an eruption from Yellowstone, we could have a global ice age like this inside of 3 months. I don't know. I mean, I hope that don't happen. I'm not playing fearmonger here, but I just want to throw you. There's always an outside chance. I don't know, man. I'm just telling you that's something that can actually happen. If there's a major eruption of the Yellowstone volcano, which is, I don't know, super huge. It makes Mount St. Helens look like nothing. Besides killing all the people in that area for 500 miles around, it would cause a global ice age. And actually, when these weather patterns have actually destroyed and built up empires. This is actually on the Ice Age Now site, but it's not just a theory because a lot of the underlying strength of an empire actually is the agricultural and food supply. Believe it or not, I mean, sometimes, in today's technological age, you don't believe that. But, if this actually occurred, I could see the United States and Russia, and even North Korea, forget about it. The United States and Russia would be greatly weakened. There'd be no doubt about it. So, due to the ice sheets. But Russia, too. I mean, Russia's already freaking got a problem with this deal. But, certain parts, like Alaska, believe it or not, would be habitable. New York City area would not. Believe it or not. That's just how it is, because the landmass keeps the cold air in. The oceans themselves are actually a little bit of a moderator, and that's what actually keeps Alaska from becoming an ice sheet during the last global ice age. So it just would be a changed world. I don't know if this is going to get this extreme, but what they're predicting is a mini global ice age going back to the way it was in the 1600s, which is pretty damn severe, which will cause a lot of food problems. So I'm just putting this out here for informational purposes, not political purposes, and I'm actually putting it out in a succinct way. It's more or less this is the cliff notes for the theory. So just to let you know that sometimes people are so convinced that we're going into global warming due to all the major media stuff that's been out there. It's they're not telling you everything that's going on, and they do have an agenda to push for a global carbon tax to fund a global government. So that is why global warming is a very important topic to convince, and they want to convince people that it's going on, because this way they'll acquiesce to a global carbon tax to fund the global government. So anyway, just figured I'd put this out here in a succinct form, and just give you the quick and dirty on it. So anyway, over and out.